And we can look at the history of this, and we know that because it's by the road, it's by the water, it's there. This probably got used fairly heavily in the spring, early spring, probably right after they started getting kicked off the meadows. If we could go back and actually get some details from way back when.
That just makes sense. I mean, they just moved them up the hill, probably.
And so, because it stayed open, it dried. The snow's not going to pile up on this one. The aspect's the right direction, so it's going to clear off faster than the high country. And this is where they came. And then it's also along a stock driveway that people trail from there to there. And so, this is an area where historically there was heavy use, and now we're looking at changing. And how do we get that to change and manipulate this plant community? Can we do it with cows alone? Probably not. It'll stay constant, probably. We can do some stuff on the site over here on the other side of the road where it's changed. Can the cows come in here and manipulate this a little? Yes. We can definitely maintain this in this condition forever. As long as we can keep it from burning. Which cows are kind of an important tool for that, if we can manage how the disturbance moves through here. On this one, it may be, on the other side, we could change the timing and the intensity to impact the annuals and increase the benefit and restoration potential of those perennial grasses.
So you're saying by trying to impact those annuals earlier on, maybe you'd save some moisture for perennials?
You may actually do it twice. There's 2 times, right? The new stuff coming out is we get better response out of the perennials by grazing during the dormant season in the fall and winter.
Mm-hmm. Because you're saving some, yeah.
Because you're saving some moisture. Also, you're removing some of that litter cover,
right,
which actually is allowing the germination of the cheatgrass to come, and then those little plants dry up over winter. They can't handle it being out protected. And you're taking care of the fuel. I mean, just that act of grazing in the wintertime removes a huge fuel load after we grow it completely.
So you're saying maybe a 2-phase grazing on these areas like this?
Might be a plan where you graze fairly heavy early in the spring one year, and then the next year you graze in the fall and take it down also. And then kind of in that intermediate, and that's where you mix that, you watch your response, because if we have more than 10 or 15% perennial bunch grasses in that stand, there's a chance that it could recover with just management, right? Without doing a whole lot of different changes and adding expensive inputs, seeding, spraying, but there's always opportunity. It is at a very stable plant community. It's resistant to change without that disturbance, and then there's a stretch on that rubber band. You know, if it burns, it's going to look just like that side. We know this because we got the same site right over there, and so if it burns, this has really high potential to look like that. And if we're okay with what it turns into, that's okay. But that's going to start to drop into the next, that's farther closer to that cheatgrass dominated box. Versus if we can work on our management, and it's a timing thing, you know, timing thing.
Pretty obvious, isn't it?
No shrubs.
No shrubs. A lot more annuals. I think there's more annuals.
Definitely more annuals. There's also less perennial grass.
State 2, annual sandberg dominated state. And this is also a very stable site resistant to change. You know, if Wyatt came through here and just mowed this completely down, it will respond and come back exactly the same it is. So in order to facilitate that, we need to adjust when and how much. The hardest part is the competition. This is really going to be hard to transition back to sagebrush. Sagebrush needs to drop seed on bare soil.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't had any. And that's where extended rest in these cheatgrass areas is kind of a problem, because as the litter builds up, the little bit of sagebrush that's left all the way around, we have seed source. This is not an area that you'd want to plant, right? Because we have seed source within the vicinity, but it still needs bare ground. This understory, all we did is make a bigger fuel load without a lot of ecological benefit. Because cheatgrass doesn't hold the water too, right? This is a site where we can create our own drought. because this litter mat will hold up the precipitation and keep it from going into the soil, and it'll evaporate off.
Just like a juniper tree, huh?
Just like a juniper tree, it holds and catches that moisture, and it evaporates and doesn't go in. So, in our world of limited precipitation, we want to catch every drop of moisture that we can.
Following an assessment of upland ecological sites and their potential, we moved into a discussion of some of the issues related to traditional grazing management. The BLM provided input on how to implement and analyze outcome-based management.
My whole problem with it all is the numbers. I think we need to throw the numbers away. And let's just talk about utilization and trends. And let, the numbers would prove themselves out. But I mean, somebody could put 25 cows in here, and somebody could put 200 cows in here, and they could achieve the same utilization.
But within a total AUM, couldn't you concentrate on a given, have some flexibility within the broader area?
Yes, so if you want to say, all right, we're resting 2/3 of this allotment this year, we want to use our AUMs in this spot to implement this change, you can do that because it's in the allotment. It's
and if it's year round, you can have some flexibility on when you do that, right? So.
Sure. Yeah. Hard and fast really is the AUMs, right? And if you want to accomplish that with 25 cows for 12 months, fine, right? But if you want to do it with 200 cows, well, we're looking at 4 months. So that's just the way it is adjusted on the permit based on what it is you want to do to operate, right? We want max flexibility. So in theory, we're going to say, what if we used 200 cows for a 4-month season? That's as many as we're going to ever use. Or, I don't know what your idea is of what your max would be, but so the NEPA analysis is for 200 cows for 4 months. Well, that 4 months might be January through, April. It might be middle of the summer. It might be fall. You'd have to analyze each chunk of 4 months to figure out what the effects are going to be, right? And then on the flip side is, okay, so what if we did do 25 head for 12 months? What's going to happen, right? Your analysis has to be, talking about distribution of 25 cows on the riparian area instead of 200 cows spread across the whole thing, right? So your analysis has to cover all the bases as long as it's what you think you might do, right? We might run 25, we might run 200, so we have to analyze both.